The blinding lights of a dozen police cruisers cast harsh shadows across the suburban cul-de-sac. Emily stared in horror as the officers marched up her front steps, boots thumping against the frozen ground. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the doorframe, heart pounding. "Ma'am, we have a warrant to search the premises," the lead officer barked, flashing his badge. There have been reports of a disturbance. Emily's mind raced. Asterisk the lights. The damn HOA. Asterisk, she swallowed hard, struggling to find her voice. What's this about? We received a call about an illegal light display, the officer replied sternly. Failure to comply could result in heavy fines or even jail time. I suggest you cooperate. Panic surged through Emily's veins. Asterisk no, this can't be happening, asterisk. She glanced desperately at her husband, Jason, who stood pale-faced beside her. Their annual holiday light display was the talk of the neighborhood, a beloved tradition that brought so much joy. But after last year's HOA citation, she knew they were treading on thin ice. There must be some mistake, Jason pleaded, stepping forward. We have permits for all our lighting. We're not doing anything illegal. The officer's expression remained stoic. That's for us to determine. Now, I'm going to have to ask you both to step aside. As the officers brushed past them into the house, Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. Asterisk, this can't be happening. Not again, asterisk helplessly. She watched them fan out, scrutinizing every inch of her meticulously decorated home. Thousands of twinkling bulbs, reds, greens, blues, covered every surface, casting a kaleidoscope of color across the walls. Ma'am, we're going to need you to shut this all down, the lead officer barked, gesturing at the lights. You're in violation of several HOA regulations. Emily's mouth went dry. Asterisk violation. But we followed all the rules. Asterisk, she glanced desperately at Jason, who clenched his fists in frustration. This is outrageous, he shouted. We spent weeks planning this display. It's the centerpiece of our neighborhood's holiday celebration. The officer's expression didn't waver. I understand your frustration, sir, but the law is the law. These lights pose a fire hazard and violate local ordinances. We have no choice but to issue a citation. Emily's heart sank as the officer pulled a thick stack of papers from his jacket. Asterisk a citation. Again. Asterisk. She imagined the towering fines, the endless legal battles. Last year, it had taken them months to recover. You can't do this, Jason pleaded. The kids in this neighborhood look forward to our display all year. It brings so much joy and holiday spirit. The officer's jaw tightened. I'm sorry, but the decision has been made. Unless you shut this down immediately, we'll have no choice but to arrest you both for failure to comply. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Asterisk arrest? No, this can't be happening. Asterisk, she gripped Jason's arm, her eyes wide with terror. Slowly, she turned to face their beloved display. The Christmas tree adorned with thousands of twinkling lights, the glowing icicles hanging from the eaves, the giant inflatable Santa waving merrily in the front yard. Asterisk all of it. Ruined asterisk. Her vision blurred with tears as the officers began unplugging the lights, one by one. Asterisk, this can't be happening. Not again, asterisk. The sterile fluorescent lights of the police station cast an unflattering glow on Emily's distraught face as she sat, hands trembling, in the uncomfortable metal chair. Beside her, Jason stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched with barely contained rage. This is an outrage. He fumed, slamming his fist on the worn wooden table. We've done this display for years, and now they're trying to throw us in jail. Emily winced at the sound, her nerves already frayed. I know, Jason. I don't understand it either. She twisted her wedding ring anxiously, replaying the events of the night in her mind. The blinding police lights, the officers barging into their home, the sickening realization that their beloved holiday tradition had been reduced to a criminal offense. It's that damn HOA again, isn't it? Jason growled, his face flushed with anger. They've had it out for us ever since we refused to take down the inflatable Rudolph last year. Emily nodded wearily. The homeowners association had always been a thorn in their side, nitpicking every detail of their outdoor decor and issuing citation after citation. But this time, they had gone too far. We have to fight this, Emily, Jason insisted, leaning forward. We can't let them win. This display means everything to the kids in this neighborhood. It's our Christmas gift to the community. Emily chewed her lip anxiously. She knew Jason was right, but the thought of another drawn-out legal battle made her stomach churn. Last year's ordeal had been exhausting, both emotionally and financially. She didn't know if they had the energy to go through it all over again. I don't know, Jason, she sighed, rubbing her temples. The fines were crippling last time, and with the holidays coming up, we can't afford any more unexpected expenses. Jason's eyes narrowed. So, what? You're just going to let them bully us into submission? After everything we've put into this? He shook his head vehemently. No way. I'm not going down without a fight. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but the sound of approaching footsteps cut her off. The lead officer strode into the room, his expression grim. Mr. and Mrs. Carlson, he began, his voice clipped and professional. I'm afraid I have some bad news. The HOA has decided to press charges for violation of local ordinances and public nuisance. You're both being charged with a misdemeanor offense. Emily felt her heart sink. Asterisk misdemeanor? Charges? Asterisk. She exchanged a horrified glance with Jason, who had gone deathly pale. You can't be serious, he stammered. This is just a harmless holiday display. We're not criminals. The officer's features hardened. I understand your frustration, but the law is clear. The HOA has deemed your lights a public safety hazard and a disturbance to the neighborhood. He paused, his expression softening slightly. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come with me. As the officer moved to cuff their wrists, Emily felt a surge of panic. Asterisk, this can't be happening. Not again, asterisk. She glanced wildly at Jason, whose face was a mask of fury and desperation. We won't go down without a fight, he growled, his voice trembling with emotion. I promise you that. The courtroom was in an uproar as Emily and Jason Carlson were led in, their wrists bound in handcuffs. Onlookers murmured and whispered, their faces a mix of shock and outrage. Emily's eyes darted nervously around the room, her heart pounding in her chest. Asterisk, how had it come to this asterisk? Just days ago, their home had been a twinkling winter wonderland, a beloved tradition that brought joy to the entire neighborhood. Now they were facing criminal charges, all because of a few pesky lights. As the judge entered and the room fell silent, Emily felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She glanced over at Jason, who sat beside her, his jaw set in a determined grimace. She knew he was just as terrified as she was, but his unwavering resolve gave her strength. We are here today to address the charges brought against Mr. and Mrs. Carlson by the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, the judge began, his voice stern. They stand accused of violating local ordinances and public nuisance laws with their excessive holiday light display. Emily felt her stomach twist into knots. Asterisk excessive. Their display was anything but. Asterisk, she opened her mouth to protest, but Jason's hand on her arm stopped her. Your Honor. The HOA's lawyer rose, his expression smug. The Carlsons' light display poses a serious fire hazard and disturbs the peace of the entire neighborhood. It's an egregious violation of our community guidelines. Emily felt a surge of indignation. Asterisk community guidelines. Asterisk those so-called guidelines were nothing more than a list of arbitrary rules designed to stifle any semblance of individual expression. That's absurd, Jason shouted, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the courtroom. Our display is a beloved tradition that brings joy to everyone who sees it. It's not a fire hazard. We've taken every safety precaution. The judge raised a hand, silencing the outbursts. Be that as it may, Mr. Carlson, the law is clear. The HOA has the right to enforce its regulations, and your display has been deemed in violation. Emily's heart sank. Asterisk no, this can't be happening. Asterisk, she gripped Jason's hand, her nails digging into his skin. Asterisk, they can't do this to us. Not again, asterisk. Your Honor, we are willing to make any reasonable adjustments to our display to bring it into compliance. Jason pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. But we can't just shut it down. It means everything to our family and our community. The judge's expression softened slightly, and Emily dared to feel a glimmer of hope. Asterisk, maybe they'll understand. Maybe they'll see how important this is to us, asterisk. I'm sorry, Mr. Carlson, but the law is clear, the judge said, his tone regretful. The HOA has filed a formal complaint, and I have no choice but to uphold it. You and your wife are hereby sentenced to 3 months in county jail, with a fine of $5,000 each. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Asterisk jail time. Thousands in fines. Asterisk, she stared at the judge, her mouth agape, as the courtroom erupted in a chorus of outraged gasps and murmurs. Asterisk, this can't be happening. It can't be asterisk. As the bailiffs moved to escort them away, Emily felt a surge of desperation. Asterisk, there has to be a way to stop this. We can't let them win. Not this time, asterisk. The metal bars of the jail cell felt like a vice, closing in around Emily with every passing moment. She paced the small space, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the surreal turn of events. Asterisk jail time. Thousands and fines. All for a holiday display. Asterisk, she shook her head in disbelief, the injustice of it all making her blood boil. Beside her, Jason sat on the narrow cot, his head in his hands. Emily could see the tension in his shoulders, the weight of the predicament bearing down on him. This is insane, Jason, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. How can they do this to us? All we were trying to do was spread a little holiday cheer. Jason raised his head, his eyes red-rimmed and weary. I don't know him. I don't know. He sighed heavily, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I thought we had a good case, but that judge didn't seem to care. Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. Asterisk, of course, he didn't care. The HOA had the law on their side, asterisk. She slumped down on the cot next to Jason, her head falling onto his shoulder. What are we going to do? She asked, her voice trembling. We can't afford those fines, and I can't bear the thought of being behind bars for the holidays. Jason wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. We're going to fight this, Emily. I promised you that. His voice was firm, his determination unwavering. We're not going to let them win. Not this time. Emily nodded, finding solace in his embrace. Asterisk, he's right. We can't give up. Not when so much is at stake, asterisk. Just then, the sound of keys jangling in the lock drew their attention to the cell door. A guard stood outside, his expression neutral. Visitors for you, he said, stepping aside to reveal a familiar face. Emily's eyes widened in surprise. Mom, she breathed, rushing to the bars. Her mother, Evelyn, stood on the other side, her brow furrowed with concern. Oh, my poor babies, she said, reaching through the bars to cup Emily's face. What on earth have they done to you? Emily felt the tears welling up in her eyes. It's a long story, Mom, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But we're in serious trouble. Evelyn's expression hardened with determination. Well then, we'd better get to work, she said, glancing over at Jason. I'm not about to let my grandchildren's Christmas be ruined by a bunch of power-hungry HOA bullies. Jason's face lit up with hope. You mean you'll help us fight this? He asked, his voice tinged with relief. Evelyn nodded firmly. You bet your sweet behind I will. she said, a steely glint in her eye. No one messes with my family and gets away with it. Emily felt a surge of gratitude and love for her mother. Asterisk, she's our last hope, asterisk, she reached through the bars, squeezing Evelyn's hand. Thank you, Mom, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We couldn't do this without you. Evelyn smiled, her eyes shining with a fierce, maternal pride. That's what family is for, my dear, she said, her tone reassuring. Now let's get you two out of here and start planning our next move. The sun had long since set by the time Emily and Jason emerged from the courthouse, their faces etched with exhaustion. Beside them, Evelyn walked with a determined stride, her brow furrowed in concentration. Well, that was a complete waste of time, she huffed, her words laced with frustration. Those HOA goons have the judge in their pocket, that's for sure. Emily sighed, the weight of the day's events settling heavily on her shoulders. I can't believe they're really going to make us take down the lights, she said, her voice small and defeated. Jason squeezed her hand, his expression resolute. We're not giving up that easily, Em, he said, his tone unwavering. We've got one more trick up our sleeve. Evelyn's eyebrows shot up. Oh, really? She said, her interest piqued. And what might that be? Jason grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. You'll see, he said, quickening his pace towards their car. Emily watched him, her curiosity mingling with a growing sense of unease. Asterisk, what is he planning? Asterisk, she wondered, as she hurried to keep up. Once they were safely inside the car, Jason turned to Evelyn, his expression serious. Mom, I need you to do me a favor, he said, his voice low and intense. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. Anything, dear, she said, her maternal instincts kicking into high gear. I need you to go to the hardware store and buy as many Christmas lights as you can, Jason said, his words spilling out in a rush. And I mean, as many as you can possibly carry. Evelyn's brow furrowed in confusion. Christmas lights? She echoed, her tone skeptical. What on earth for? Jason's lips quirked into a determined smile. We're going to give the HOA a light show they'll never forget, he said, his voice laced with a hint of mischief. Emily felt a flutter of apprehension in her stomach. Jason, are you sure about this? She asked, her voice hesitant. I mean, we just got out of jail for doing the same thing. Jason reached over and squeezed her hand reassuringly. Trust me, Em, he said, his eyes shining with conviction. This is going to work. Evelyn chuckled, her expression amused. Well, you don't have to ask me twice, she said, already reaching for the car door. I'll be back before you know it. As Evelyn hurried off, Emily turned to Jason, her brow creased with concern. Jason, what exactly are you planning? She asked, her voice tinged with trepidation. Jason's eyes gleamed with a determined spark. We're going to fight fire with fire, Em, he said, his words laced with a hint of defiance. If the HOA wants a war, then that's exactly what they're going to get. Emily felt a chill run down her spine, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. Asterisk, what have we gotten ourselves into, asterisk? But as she watched Jason's unwavering expression, she knew there was no turning back. They were in this fight for the long haul, and come hell or high water, they were going to win. Emily stared in awe as Evelyn's car pulled up, the trunk and backseat overflowing with bags and boxes of Christmas lights. Jason immediately sprang into action, hauling the supplies into the garage and quickly setting to work. Jason, are you sure about this? Emily asked, her voice laced with uncertainty as she watched her husband's frenzied preparations. I mean, won't this just make the HOA even angrier? Jason paused, wiping the sweat from his brow as he turned to face her. Em, we've got to do something to fight back, he said, his tone resolute. If we just roll over and let them win, we'll be miserable for the rest of our lives. Evelyn chimed in, her eyes gleaming with mischief. That's right, dear. Sometimes you've got to fight fire with fire. She began unpacking the lights, sorting them into piles with practiced efficiency. Emily chewed her lip nervously, her gaze darting between the two of them. But what if we get arrested again? She asked, her voice small. I can't bear the thought of spending the holidays in jail. Jason reached out and squeezed her hand, his expression softening. We're not going to let that happen, I promise, he said, his voice low and reassuring. This time, we're going to be smart about it. Evelyn nodded in agreement, a sleek grin spreading across her face. Exactly. And I've got a few tricks up my sleeve that will have those HOA vultures singing a different tune. Emily couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope at her mother's words. Asterisk, maybe they're right. Maybe we can find a way to fight back and win Asterisk. As the sun began to set, the three of them worked tirelessly, stringing up the lights with a renewed sense of purpose. Emily couldn't help but marvel at the sheer volume of bulbs they had amassed, thousands upon thousands, covering every inch of their house and yard. There, that should do it, Jason said, stepping back to admire their handiwork. Now, let's just hope it works. Evelyn chuckled, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Oh, it'll work, all right, she said, already reaching for her car keys. Now let's go put on a show for the HOA. Emily felt a surge of adrenaline as they piled into the car and headed back towards the neighborhood. Asterisk, this is it. Our last chance to save our Christmas asterisk. As they pulled up to their house, Emily's breath caught in her throat. The entire block was bathed in a dazzling array of lights, casting a warm glow over the entire street. She could already see their neighbors peeking out from their windows, their faces aglow with wonder. Wow, she breathed, her eyes wide with amazement. It's incredible. Jason grinned, his chest puffed out with pride. I told you it would work, he said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Evelyn laughed, her expression triumphant. And now let's see what those HOA goons have to say about it, she said, already striding towards the front door. Emily felt a surge of adrenaline as she followed her mother, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Asterisk, this is it. The moment of truth, asterisk. As they approached the door, the sound of raised voices reached their ears, and Emily knew that the battle had only just begun. The air crackled with tension as Emily, Jason, and Evelyn stepped through the front door, the cacophony of angry shouts spilling out into the night. Emily's eyes widened as she surveyed the scene before her. A gaggle of HOA board members, faces flushed with outrage, stood clustered in the entryway, their fingers pointed accusingly at the dazzling light display. This is an outrage. One of the women, a stern-faced older woman with a severe bun, bellowed. You're in direct violation of our community guidelines, and we won't stand for it. Jason stepped forward, his expression calm and resolute. With all due respect, ma'am, our display is perfectly within the boundaries of the law, he said, his voice steady and unwavering. We've taken every safety precaution, and our neighbors love it. The woman's nostrils flared, her eyes narrowing to slits. Love it, she scoffed, her voice dripping with derision. This monstrosity is a public nuisance and a fire hazard. We've received dozens of complaints from the residents. Evelyn stepped up beside Jason, her arms crossed over her chest. Well, then, it seems to me that you have a problem with the entire neighborhood, not just my family, she said, her tone laced with barely contained contempt. The woman's gaze snapped at Evelyn, her expression hardening. And who, exactly, do you think you are? She hissed, her voice laced with venom. Evelyn met her stare without flinching, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I'm the grandmother who's going to make sure her grandchildren's Christmas isn't ruined by a bunch of power-hungry busybodies, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. The woman's face contorted with rage, and she opened her mouth to retort, but Emily cut her off, her voice trembling with emotion. Please, Can't we just find a way to work this out? She pleaded, her eyes darting between the warring parties. This display means so much to our family and our community. Isn't there some way we can compromise? The woman's expression softened slightly, but only for a moment. Compromise? She scoffed, her voice laced with derision. There's no room for compromise when it comes to the safety and well-being of this neighborhood. Those lights are coming down, or we'll see you all in court. Again. Jason's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with determination. Then that's where we'll be, he said, his voice low and resolute. We're not backing down, not this time. The woman's lips curled into a sneer. We'll see about that, she said, casting one last withering glance at the family before turning on her heel and stalking out the door, the other HOA members trailing behind her like a flock of angry, squawking birds. As the door slammed shut, the silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt her heart pounding in her chest, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Asterisk they're not giving up, and neither are we asterisk. Jason wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Don't worry, Em, he murmured, his voice laced with conviction. We're going to win this thing. I promise. Evelyn chuckled, a mischievous glint in her eye. You bet your sweet behind we are, she said, her voice brimming with confidence. And we're just getting started. The courtroom was a cauldron of tension as Emily, Jason, and Evelyn sat facing the stern-faced HOA board members and their array of lawyers. The judge, his expression unreadable, surveyed the scene with a critical eye. We are here today to address the ongoing dispute between the Carlson family and the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, he began, his voice commanding the room's attention. The Carlsons have been cited for violating local ordinances and public nuisance laws with their excessive holiday light display. Emily gripped Jason's hand tightly, her heart pounding. Asterisk this is it. Asterisk, she thought, her stomach tied in knots. Asterisk or last chance to save our Christmas asterisk. The HOA's lead lawyer, a slick-looking man with a carefully crafted air of authority, rose to his feet. Your Honor, the evidence is clear, he said, his voice dripping with smug confidence. The Carlsons' light display is a blatant disregard for the community guidelines and a serious safety hazard. We have no choice but to demand its immediate removal. Jason stood, his expression resolute. Your Honor, our display brings joy and holiday cheer to this entire neighborhood, he argued, his voice unwavering. We've taken every precaution to ensure its safety, and our neighbors love it. Shutting it down would be a travesty. The HOA lawyer scoffed, his eyes narrowing. Your neighbors' opinions are irrelevant, Mr. Carlson. The law is clear, and the Homeowners Association has the authority to enforce it. Evelyn leaned forward, her gaze piercing. Your Honor, may I speak? She interjected, her voice tinged with a subtle challenge. The judge nodded, his brow furrowing. You may, ma'am. Evelyn rose, her posture straight and her expression unwavering. Your Honor, my family has been a part of this community for over 30 years, she began, her voice measured and authoritative. We've always respected the rules and guidelines set forth by the Homeowners Association. But this display is more than just a few twinkling lights. It's a beloved tradition that brings joy and happiness to countless people. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. These lights aren't a nuisance or a safety hazard. They're a gift, a symbol of the holiday spirit that binds this neighborhood together. And we won't let a few power-hungry bureaucrats take that away from us. The HOA lawyer opened his mouth to interject, but Evelyn raised a hand, silencing him. Your Honor, my family is willing to work with the association to address any legitimate concerns, she continued, her voice firm. But we will not back down. This display is staying, whether they like it or not. The courtroom erupted in a flurry of murmurs and whispers, the tension palpable. Emily glanced at Jason, her eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. Asterisk maybe, just maybe, We can pull this off asterisk. The judge raised a hand, restoring order. I've heard the arguments from both sides, he said, his expression thoughtful. And while I understand the concerns of the homeowners association, I'm not convinced that this display poses a true threat to the community. He paused, his gaze settling on the Carlson family. However, I do expect the Carlsons to work closely with the HOA to address any safety issues and ensure that the display remains within the bounds of the law. Emily felt a surge of relief, her heart swelling with gratitude. Asterisk, we did it. We actually did it, asterisk. As the judge adjourned the hearing, the Carlsons embraced, their laughter and tears mingling in the air. The battle had been won, and their cherished holiday tradition would live on, a testament to the power of family, community, and the unbreakable spirit of the season.